Welcome to RSBN Tonight. I am your host, Adam Taxon. A lot of stories out there today. The Assange interview, a verdict in a controversial case in Israel, and of course the repeal of Obamacare, in which the circumstances today have Chuck Schumer feeling very proud of himself and his own brilliance. But you know what? Y'all are going to have to just wait for that, right? And I said y'all to emphasize that we are here in our studio in Alabama, even though I am a Pennsylvanian. But you're going to have to wait. It's not as if these stories just broke seconds ago, and it's not as if in this day and age we are your only resource for information. Let's not kid ourselves. I know many of you were on Twitter and Facebook quite a bit today, and of course we're different here at RSBN, and I'm certainly not trying to be the RSBN version of Brian Williams. So I am, with a long introduction, starting things out a little differently, but I want to make a point here. Part of that point is that sometimes, even in 2017, you need more than 140 characters to get the gist of something. And that's not a slight on the president-elect whatsoever, because I want to add that sometimes a series of thoughts and details don't even lend themselves to what I do, which is a couple of minutes as a lead story on a news show. Sometimes you just have no substitute for actually reading something. And I'm not going to read you something on the air here. Well, I'll read you parts of something on the air. But I'm using the important beginning of the broadcast to emphasize above all a message, which I'll probably come back to at some point. And that message is that there is a place, there is a piece that you're just going to have to read to get what you need from it. And that piece perfectly illustrates the decaying state of the mainstream media. So I can't emphasize this enough. So as a certain community organizer says, let me be clear. Got to read it. And the story I'm talking about, it just came out. It's by a fairly controversial and definitely not conservative journalist named Glenn Greenwald. And I'm using the term journalist non-ironically. I'm being serious. He is the real deal. He just doesn't agree with us on plenty of things. The article, which I've been building up to, you should be able to see it up there right now. It's called Wash Post is Richly Rewarded for False News About Russia Threat While Public is Deceived. It's published in theintercept.com, which I wasn't familiar with before today. You have a pause button, of course, and it's 2017, and I will not be offended if you want to use that pause button now and just go ahead and read the thing now. The news show will still work, and it'll be in the archives later. But I cannot authoritatively just sum up this article for you beyond that it excoriates the hypocrisy of the Washington Post, which, by the way, is now owned by Amazon's Jeff Bezos. Specifically, it slams the Washington Post for total hypocrisy in blatantly lying to make Russia and Trump look bad. This is as it tries to, at the same time, lead basically a jihad against so-called fake news. There is a tweet you can see above there by now, and it's by Marty Baron, the executive editor of the Washington Post. The tweet claimed that the Russian propaganda effort helped spread fake news during the election, according to independent researchers. And, well, no, he said, say independent researchers. And those last three words, very weaselly, by the way. Here's a key quote from Greenwald's story. It was Barron who went to Twitter on the evening of November 24th to announce the Post's expose on the enormous reach of Russia's fake news operation, based on what he heralded as the finding of, quote, independent researchers. The weasel word I talked about before, weasel phrase. Barron's tweet went all over the place. To date, it has been retweeted more than 3,000 times, including by many journalists with their own large followings. But after that story, there was a barrage of intense criticism, and Greenwald goes on a little later. The Post finally added, after this was all debunked, its lengthy editor's note distancing itself from the anonymous group that provided the key claims of its story. And Greenwald continues. What did Barron tell his followers about this editor's note that gutted the key claims of the story he hyped? Nothing. Not a word. To date, he has been publicly silent about these revisions. So, having spread the original claims to tens of thousands of people, if not more, he took no steps to ensure that any of them heard about the major walkback on the article's most significant inflammatory claims. And again, I'm using what Greenwald said word for word here, so I got to give credit. Just continuing with that, he did, however, ironically, find the time to promote a different Post story about how terrible and damaging fake news is. And you can probably see it up there, related to Pizzagate. And you can see the hypocrisy going on. You know, see the pious stance in this tweet saying that Pizzagate shows how fake news hurts real people. And there's a lot behind Pizzagate, but I'm just not going to digress there right now, not to minimize its importance. You should be seeing a few more images up there in the next few seconds about how widespread the trend is to, make these claims and not walk back on them or publicize the fact that they weren't true later. This is a trend among what Michael Savage, whom we love here at RSBN, what he calls the Democrat media complex. And again, hit pause if you need to, if you're seeing the tweets too quickly. But you can see all about the bogus charges that the Russians hacked the Vermont utility. And you can see also how Hillary Clinton followed the Washington Post and the media's lead in terms of how the Russians supposedly hacked the election so badly. But back to the main point of this lead story. It's not any editorializing by me. It's just me telling you that you got to go and actually read this Glenn Greenwald article called "Wash Post is Richly Rewarded for False News About Russia Threat While Public is Deceived." And there's stuff about the economics of that too, which I didn't get into here. And once again, giving credit where it's due, theintercept.com.